I'm Daniel, the past life regressionist, and it's time to begin.
Lift off and the clock has started.
This is Timeless Spirituality. Enjoy each of your time.
Welcome back, everyone. So for today's episode, I'm having on Andy Myers to discuss his new book, The Sky Diaries. I found this conversation to be fun. I guess that's the simplest way that I can put it. We talked about his book. We talked about reincarnation. We talked about his life as a father. We talked about action movies from the 80s and 90s. I think it was just a fun conversation, and I really enjoyed getting to know Andy, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Also, if you're interested in booking a regression with me to discover who, when, and where you have been throughout history, you can reach me on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist or my website, thepastliferegressionist.com. Andy! Welcome to Timeless Spirituality!
Hey, thanks for having me. That was a grand entrance right there. Jeez.
Well, I mean, a grand entrance for a grand old jolly fellow.
It reminds me of that wrestling announcer, "Let's get ready to rumble," which is probably trademarked, actually. I probably shouldn't say that, but...
It's okay. I'm not making anything off this right now.
No, thanks for having me, though. It's a pleasure getting a chance to join you.
Well, thank you for being here. All right, let's just dive in. First question. What is your favorite song that has to do with time, and why?
My favorite song that has to do with time. You know, one actually just popped in my head. What was that? And again, it's like a cheesy 80s song, Time After Time. Was that Cyndi Lauper?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what I'm thinking of? Okay, that's definitely not it. No offense to Cyndi Lauper, but that's not it. But there's a lot of songs that have to do with time. My favorite is probably a little lesser known. It's by Linkin Park, and it's called Shadow of the Day. Yeah, it's about saying goodbye to somebody. It's about the end of one chapter and the beginning of the next. And one of the reasons this song is one of my favorites, it stirs up strong emotions. The song is always reminded me of my grandma and the synchronicities and, shall we say, miracles that occurred during her passing. And we shared a mutual admiration for sunsets, my grandma and I did. And the repeating hook in the song is "The sun will set for you." So it's very appropriate. And it's always been one of my favorites since 2008 when she passed.
So my next question for you, who is Andy?
Yeah, that's philosophy 101, isn't it? Who are any of us, really? I don't know. I do wear a lot of hats, including the old-fashioned one that's on my noggin. I've been a psychic medium for 13 years. So that's one of the hats that I wear, is helping people with death and, giving them the comfort and closure and validation by relaying messages from loved ones who have passed on. I'm also an author. I'm coming out with my 4th book this year, and thrilled about that, as we'll be talking about. And I'm also a speaker and a life coach and a father. I think out of all those jobs, by far the most rewarding is being a father to my daughter, Sky. She's the coolest little person in the world, and she's 7. So I get the added bonus of she still thinks I'm cool. That might change in 10 years, but yeah, I actually made the switch from social worker to psychic. So feels like a lifetime ago, but yeah, back in the day, I have a degree in social work, and I worked at mental health facilities and after school programs, and I always knew that I wanted to help people for a living. But that's the irony of being a psychic, is sometimes you can't foresee your own future. So I had no idea this is where life would lead me. But yeah, I am a student of life. I like learning new things. I like podcasting and gosh, I wish I could say reading books. I used to read a lot of books, but anymore, when I get the chance, I'd rather write one. And yeah,
I'm just excited to have you on today because we're here to talk about your book, The Sky Diaries.
Sky Diaries, yeah.
Admittedly, I have to tell the audience, I only made it halfway through, So, I mean, I'm going to continue reading it though, because it's good. Like, it's really good. And I know this is a show about spirituality right now, but I also am a writer. So I have to do my due diligence as a writer right now and say, I admire the way that you bring a room to life through your writing. That's where I struggle as a writer, is how do I activate the senses when I bring someone into a room through my use of language? And you do an amazing job with that. So I just want to commend you right off the bat from a writing perspective of how great you are at really painting that picture, which I think is very difficult to do as a writer, or at least from my point of view. So
thanks. I appreciate that. Well, this is a nonfiction book. It's a 100% true story. I've never written a fiction book, not yet anyways. So, the ability to bring the room to life, I think maybe partly comes from the fact that I lived this story, and I still remember the emotions and the details that were in the room, and the energy of the room and the people and the conversation that took place. So for writing the book, it was just about recreating it. If I ever take a shot at fiction, I guarantee it'll be a little more difficult, because all that's going to come from the imagination, whereas I'm just recalling facts,
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, because I'm looking in my room right now and I could say picture on white wall. Yes.
But it's all a work in progress. I think the more you write, the better you get. And, it keeps me sane. I don't realize how much I love it until, I'm 6 hours into writing, and it feels like I just started. And the Sky Diaries is a book, boy, I tell you, it's unlike any book that I've written before. And it's unlike any book I could ever write again, because it's literally my life story. Granted, I never imagined writing a memoir at age 40. It's a little young, I think, as far as memoirs go, but it's been a crazy journey. And it's kind of a play on words, actually. My daughter's, her name is Sky, SKY. And there's actually a lot of undertones, as I mentioned, with the song Shadow of a Day and the sunsets. And there's a lot of undertones about the sky and chasing sunsets and appreciating the beauty that's above us and around us. And so it's kind of a play on words, but she is literally named after sunsets and shooting stars and all the good stuff, rainbows, God, cloud formations. It's call me a hippie, but I enjoy those things. And kind of funny side tangent, talk about synchronicity and serendipity. So she went back to school after winter break just the other day. And before going back to school, we checked her backpack, and sure enough, there was a homework assignment that we didn't know she had. And so we're sitting there over breakfast right before we got to go back to school. And her homework assignment is to interview somebody in the family to ask them what their favorite book is. And so she's interviewing me, and we look out in the backyard, and there's a gorgeous, breathtaking sunrise going on. The whole sky's on fire. It's pink and purple and orange. And so I thought that it's just strange. So she's interviewing me about what my favorite book is. And I said, well, it's the Sky Diaries. Next question was, why is it your favorite? And I was like, well, because I wrote it and you're in it. What's your favorite part of the book? Well, probably the part where you're born. And so we got a good chuckle out of that. And but it's been a long time in the making. It took me 2 years to write. It's been 3 years of tinkering and editing, and finally getting to the point where the book's getting published. And so I believe by the time this podcast is released, it is available on Amazon. So
up until that halfway point where I'm in the book, I've really enjoyed it. However, there's one thing I want to talk about first. When I looked at the cover, awesome cover.
Thanks.
Naturally, I believe in these things.
Uh-huh.
Doing what I do, I'm a firm believer in past lives.
But not everybody is.
Right. Not everybody is. And that's where I want to give you the opportunity right now to really elaborate on the subtitle of the book, which is A True Story of Reincarnation. Because where I felt that kind of jolt with it is when I hear the word true, I think more factual. That's how I associate the word. Now, I also know that there's that word that people have their own truth. So when you say a true story of reincarnation, because also there are moments in the book where you'd have to be really stubborn as a reader to not open your eyes to what you lay out there, because even for skeptics, you'd have to be really, really stubborn to be like,
Well,
how are you not buying into this? Because I think you have the closest thing to overwhelming evidence to support what you're writing about. But with that said, it's not gauging like a thermometer where the thermometer will read 32 degrees outside when it's freezing.
Right.
So I guess my question for you is, when you say a true story of reincarnation, since there are things that point towards it being factual,
Mm-hmm.
but it still can't be definitively proven, which again, I believe in your story. I believe in everything you're saying. And again, I'm like, how could you not believe this when reading it? But so what do you mean when you say a true story of reincarnation?
Well, the subtitle actually, I played around with that for a long time until, in a moment of brilliance, my aunt came up with this subtitle. She's an author as well, so that helps. And she's also a huge believer in this kind of subject matter. Hi, Terry. She's my Aunt Terry Myers. Got to give a shout out. But the original title was, The Remarkable True Story of Guardian Angels, Past Lifetimes, and One Family's Journey Through Multiple Lifetimes. And then it dawned on me that subtitle is going to take up the whole damn cover. And I wanted the cover to be my daughter touching the sunset. So we shortened it. And to answer your question, we decided on a true story of reincarnation because I didn't want people to think that this was a fictional book. It's 100% true, meaning all the stories, all the chapters, all the people, all the fantastical occurrences actually happened in real life. I guess, kind of like beauty, proof is in the eye of the beholder. And yes, skeptics are stubborn. So are believers, which means,
Right here.
9 times out of 10, believers will always believe, skeptics will always be skeptical. And some skeptics, short of having a ghostly presence smack them in the back of the head with a frying pan, they may never believe.
God, even
I have
then,
a lot
of them.
Oh yeah, even then, gravitational anomaly due to the flux capacitor, and yeah. But yeah, it's a true story, and it's the closest thing that I could offer to the general public that is concrete, solid proof that we have all lived past lifetimes before, that we've all known each other in previous versions of ourselves. And this is a worldwide phenomena, is what I want to emphasize here. We have kids from every walk of life, every country, every socioeconomic class, children, these young children, 3 and 4 years old, who not only have past life memories, but they recall so much factual evidence in terms of what their name was, who they live, where they lived, what they did for a living, what items and were important to them, what hobbies and activities they were into, that some of these kids can look at a person or look at an item and they can say the history of that person or said item. And, short of a 3-year-old Google searching, to come up with this information, like, how is it possible that kids know things that they should not know? In fact, and there's thousands upon thousands of cases of this worldwide. Ironically, a lot of these incidents occur between the ages of 3 and 4. And I've concluded that, children are highly psychic. Kids are super, super intuitive. Some animals are as well, but kids take the cake. And I think 3 and 4 is that magical little window where they're recalling and remembering past life occurrences, because they're still young enough to hold on to that raw psychic abilities, but they're finally old enough that they're articulate enough to verbalize what's going on in their heart, what's going on in their head. And so, you have these kids of, pointing to a picture on the counter and says, oh, that's his name's Charles, and I saw him before I was born. And people said, well, no, you didn't, because he passed 15 years before you were born. And he said, no, his name's Charles, but people call him Buddy, and he loved to go fishing. And Aunt Mary, was always going fishing with him. And it's like, the family is like record scratches, people's jaws are hanging open in disbelief. And it's like, okay, how did a kid pull that kind of information out of thin air, unless they really did cross paths with Grandpa Charles in between, between lifetimes. So, but as for my book, and I know you believe, Daniel, it's just, I know you're opening up the show to new audiences in terms of, people believing, but I think you'll see as the book concludes, as you get to that part, the real jaw-dropping incident happens in one of the very last chapters, where it's the last puzzle piece of the past life jigsaw puzzle that finally clicks. And wouldn't you know it, it's something that my daughter said 1 week shy of her 3rd birthday. Right on cue, right on cue. So,
oh, look, I don't need to get to the last chapter to believe it at this point.
yeah,
I think it's already there.
Yeah, it is wild. My aunt Terry, because she was the first human to read this book, back when it was a manuscript and there was a billion typos in it still. And she said, you could probably label this as fiction because it's crazy enough. And I said, yeah, I know I could, and it may reach a bigger audience if I do that. But I, like, in my heart of hearts, I just couldn't justify listing it as fiction when it's 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things in there are insane. Some of the things literally defy explanation. They defy the laws of physics in one part of the book. But I've seen it with my own eyes, and in some instances there were multiple. Pan? The paint roller,
or the paint roller. Sorry, the paint roller with the walls, and
the flying.
Wondering if you were doing the right color. There's
right.
your teaser, everyone. It's really cool what he writes about there.
Yeah, and that's kind of a synchronicity that ties into the first book that I ever wrote. But it's it's been a long journey to get this seen through to fruition. And so again, 5 years of working on this book, but we keep joking the book's 200 years in the making, because it stems back to some past lifetimes where my family and I intersected and impacted each other. And throughout the vast sea of billions of souls, we somehow found each other on this crazy planet and decided, hey, wouldn't it be fun to come back and live a life together again, but this time during a pandemic? So we got that going for us.
I'm happy that you didn't release it as a fiction. I'm happy that you stuck with nonfiction, because this is a book that I would give to a skeptic.
Yeah. And obviously I didn't write it to convince the skeptics, because some of them don't want to believe. I think some people who don't believe in otherworldly phenomenon, they don't believe because they don't want to believe. Because for some people, it rocks their belief system too much. It upturns the status quo. And for a lot of people, I think, maybe I'm overstepping my bounds in assuming this, but I think for some people, it's like an ego thing where if they can't explain how something works, then it simply can't exist, And then you have believers like us who, I don't need to personally experience something to be open-minded to its existence. There's a lot of weird creatures in the world. I'm a closet Bigfoot fanatic. Have I ever seen one? No. Am I completely closed off to the possibility? No. How could you be? There's a lot of things in this world we can't explain, and some things will be explained, but we just haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet.
Mm-hmm. Like the bottom of the ocean. Well, I guess we have gotten to the bottom of the ocean floor. Well, maybe we think we have. Maybe there are some hidden crevices in there, and
that's tinfoil hat material, Daniel. We could go into hollow earth and inner earth and Mariana Trench theories, and but no, there's and what do they say? We know more about the moon than we do about the bottom of the ocean, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, maybe Bigfoot does exist. I don't know.
Maybe he took a submarine to the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
For all we know.
Maybe. Why not? So, first, just thank you for being so open to my. I wouldn't call it a critique necessarily, but I wouldn't even necessarily call it a challenge. But more,
no, it's a good question. It's a really good question.
Because I think it's a matter of me having an understanding of where you're coming from. So if I were to hand the book to a skeptic, and the first thing they would say to me is, well, how do I know that it's a true story? I could elaborate on that. So
sure.
It's a remarkable story. Up until the point that I've read. Still, I can't vouch for the second half of it, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it up until this point.
Well, and I think the second half of the book, you've read up to the point to even bring Sky into existence was a whole long ordeal, because medically our chances were not very good at conceiving a child. And through whatever you choose to call it, manifestation or prayer, or just sheer tenacity and faith, we brought her into existence. But the second half of the book, I think a lot of parents will relate to it, because despite the serious spiritual undertones and the guardian angels and the past lives and all the kind of mind-blowing psychic or metaphysical stuff, the story is partly about being a dad. It's about those sleepless nights and the diaper changes and the where the house is just a mess, and it's trying to balance my work, giving psychic readings and lectures, and but being home to feed Sky before bed. And so I think a lot of, especially parents of young children, will relate to the book, and it just raw, candid honesty of the ups and downs and joys and pains of being a new parent. And but kind of going back to what you said, Daniel, about people asking challenging questions, or skeptics, maybe wanting to be more open-minded to things like this. Along those lines, there's a common question people often ask me. I don't think they mean to be challenging. It's actually a really intelligent question. But some people say, okay, so if psychic mediums like myself are legit, and it is possible to talk to people in the afterlife, how is that possible, factoring in reincarnation? People ask me, if people come right back for another lifetime, how is it that you're talking to anybody over there? Wouldn't they be back living another lifetime in China or somewhere else? And it's a good question, but what I found to be true is there's a layover. Heaven, or the other side, or the afterlife, whatever you choose to call it, it's kind of like an airport. It's departures and arrivals. There's souls coming and souls going. There's people passing away. There's people being born, and there's layovers, which means that when a soul passes away, there could be 10, 30, 60 years before that person decides to come back for their next lifetime. So in between, when they're taking a rest break and processing what happened to them, and perhaps planning their next journey, it allows psychics like myself to get in touch with them, and to hear some messages and relay them to living people for some comfort and closure. But as you'll see in my book, it really poses the question, what happens when a soul passes away and comes back into the same family tree? That really stirs things up, because then you have a case of a child who may recognize people in the family that they used to know as in the previous version of themselves, and they might recognize items around a person's house that maybe used to belong to them, or items who, they can look at it and they can tell you where that item came from. And then you've got yourself a whole new can of worms. And it does happen. It's rare, but it is possible for a person to incarnate back into their same family tree. Some of us just love one another so much, we just can't get enough of each other. And, so we come back, we incarnate again, and perhaps in different capacities than last time, obviously, but it's a fascinating subject to dive into.
A couple things I want to touch on from what you said, but first off, damn it, Andy, damn it for what you just said. You just made my job so much harder explaining to people the difference between the biological component of things and just jumping into a new body. Damn it, Andy. Damn it,
Sorry,
damn it,
man.
damn it. But it's okay, because I always finish that by saying, but it is possible that you can reincarnate into the same bloodline. But damn it, Andy. So cool, though. So cool to think about jumping into the same biological family.
Yeah, it's, not just interesting from a genetic standpoint, but, it's like, gosh, what happens if somebody passes away and crosses an item that used to belong to them? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a antique vase, and so a person passes away, comes back into the same family tree, for example, 20, 30 years later, and they see that vase in somebody's cabinet and says, wow, that looks interesting, and the kid says, yeah, can I touch it? And from a genetic standpoint, it's mind-boggling. It could have fingerprints on it from their own previous version of themselves as they're holding this vase in their hand. I mean, that's scientifically, it's kind of staggering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of like that movie Time Cop, where the same matter can't occupy the same space. Well, I don't know if that's the way that it works, but it makes you think.
Time Cop, is that with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Yeah, it was such a good movie.
Awesome.
I thought it was his best one.
Oh man, yeah, that's a whole nother topic, isn't it? Bloodsport was good. Kickboxer's my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh, so you guys are spiritual guys, but you watch movies about people pummeling each other on a mat.
I watched Bloodsport last year. So
yeah, here's what I always say: you got to balance out the floofy metaphysical stuff. At the end of the day, you got to dumb it down and be a human being. I ground myself by exercising and watching a soccer game on TV, and so you can't get too caught up in the metaphysical. You can't get too lost in the paranormal. You got to sometimes dumb it down and just be normal as well. So
ever since I've gotten spiritual, I have avoided more of the overly gory movies.
Yeah.
They make me a little more uncomfortable now. But a movie like Bloodsport was just so over the top, where it's mindless entertainment for a little while. So
Well,
it's okay.
It's kind of artsy. It's martial arts, but it's artsy. But no, I like that. I know that the mindless violence, like where there's torture scenes and stuff like that. I don't really get on board with movies like that anymore. I could stomach them in my 20s, but anymore, it's like, I don't know, man. It's like, give me something that won't give me nightmares at night.
Yeah.
But anyway, my inner movie nerd is coming out, giving unsolicited movie advice here on your show. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm geeking out on it, and I'm trying to control myself right now. But before I let loose on that, there was something else I wanted to touch on that you brought up about you as a medium being able to communicate with spirits on the other side when someone says, well, they reincarnate. I have a theory for it. I believe that it may not necessarily only be the primary source of consciousness that you're communicating with if someone is already in a new body, but it may just be a part of them. Like it could be their higher self, that part that always resides on the other side. And I don't think it's as black and white as some people think that it is.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Going back to what we said about this world's stranger than we can possibly imagine. So we have to accept the fact that things in the spirit world might operate at a different frequency. And along those lines, I agree with you to a certain extent. There's a little bit of science or quantum physics that backs up your notion. And I'm gonna make a really techie story really simplistic because I'm not a physicist. But I watched this documentary, and it was about quantum particles. And I think the documentary was actually called "What the Bleep Do We Know?" And it was about the blending of science and spirituality, and when do these two different genres overlap. And they were talking about a study where they took a little bit of something. Now, I don't know if it was an atom or a molecule. I think it was a molecule. Yeah, it must have been, because I think if you split an atom, you get an explosion. So it was a molecule of some kind. They cut it in half, and they kept one half of it down here on Earth in a lab under controlled conditions. And they literally flew the corresponding half of that particle into orbit and outer space. And what they found is when they wiggled one particle in, the Petri dish here on Earth, the corresponding half in outer space moved and wiggled in the exact same way at the exact same time, meaning that there was no delay, there was no lag due to distance or time, which means these two particle halves were communicating with each other simultaneously over space and time. So if you scale that up, if our souls operate in a similar fashion, it could in fact be possible for part of our soul to remain in the afterlife while part of our soul is down here on Earth having a human experience. So my teeny tiny brain can't wrap my head around how that works in a physical or spiritual sense, but it is possible. I mean, it is possible. So who knows? Get Neil deGrasse. Yeah, there's another guest to have on your show. Get Neil deGrasse Tyson. He could probably explain that.
That would be an interesting show. I feel like we'd be butting heads a little bit.
Maybe.
I think it's so cool to think about the possibilities of what we can only comprehend in a linear time sense. So it's like, even when you mention that there may be a 30 or 60 year gap, that's in a linear time sense.
Yeah.
That's only what we can comprehend. I mean, I believe that time isn't linear, but I still can't wrap my head around what that even means.
Well, yeah. Well, and then you throw into the mix the monkey wrench of people say the past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously, and that's enough to have you reaching for the Excedrin. But, there might be some truth to it. Last night I had the craziest dream, Daniel, and I can't even explain all the parts of it, but it was basically about, how souls are eternal, and it was the one and only dream I've ever had in my life where I was seeing people simultaneously living different lifetimes at once. The past, the present, the future were all intertwined. It was a very bizarre dream, and it had major spiritual undertones. Kind of one of those dreams where I woke up and I'm like, what the hell did I eat before I went to bed? Because it had to do with like extraterrestrials and humans and time shifting and time hopping. And I remember in the dream, I even said to I saw a girl in the dream who she looked so familiar. It's not anybody that I knew, but just seeing her, I was brought to tears, and I was like, I know you and I love you and I've missed you. Like, where have you been? And then I woke up and I'm like, who was that person? I don't even know them. And must have been somebody from a past lifetime. But in the dream, I'm like, I even said to her, because it was clear that she was on a whole different level of wisdom compared to me. And I was like, we're time jumping, aren't we? I'm like, we're time hopping. And she was like, yeah, we are. So then I woke up, and like anybody else, I got on my pajamas and I brushed my teeth and I got on with the day. It's like, what else do you do? We can talk about all this spiritual heavy stuff, and at the end of the day, you still got to pay your bills and act like a relatively functional member of society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless we really are going to put on our tinfoil hats and go to the bottom of the ocean.
Well, I don't know if a tinfoil hat would help with that, because you still got to breathe underwater.
That is a good point, my friend. And that's why I don't do physics.
Yeah. Me too. There's something else I wanted to touch on that you brought up briefly in the book about reincarnation in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you had the perfect explanation for, well, I don't know if it's necessarily an explanation as much as just presenting what it was, with reincarnation being stripped out of the Bible. Was it, you said it like the 3rd or 4th century?
Yeah, I believe it was 325 AD, Roman Emperor Constantine. And it was at a meeting called the Council of Nicaea, where they were, Christianity was in its infancy at the time. And as a new world religion, they were trying to have outsiders take their religion seriously. So they all needed to get on the same page. And they were trying to figure out which scriptures were going to be included in the official Bible and which ones would not be included. And although there were many scriptures that offered or alluded, I should say, there was many scriptures that alluded or suggested reincarnation being real, that at that council, they decided to exclude those scriptures for whatever reason. But it's crazy to think if they had included those, and many Americans being Christian, many Americans would have grown up with reincarnation being commonplace. It wouldn't be in the New Age, section of the bookstore over in the corner by the weird stuff. It'd be front and center, presented as a credible topic. And in other parts of the world, it is. India and some other places, they talk about reincarnation just as it's just a natural part of their spiritual beliefs. The more circular form of time rather than linear.
Well, there's an idea for a story. Modern day evangelicals preaching reincarnation.
But here's my take. And I know the whole world doesn't subscribe to this. This is my naive opinion, but whatever spiritual beliefs a person has is okay, as long as they don't, as long as it makes them a better person and doesn't hurt anybody else in the process. So
exactly.
With writing the Sky Diaries, my intention wasn't to convince anybody of my beliefs. It was simply to share my story. And if anybody from any walk of life can take away a little bit of joy, or if it just makes them think outside the box, then it will have served its purpose, And speaking of purposes, maybe this is a little deep, but I heard a quote a while back, and I apologize, I can't remember who once said it, but a person wiser than myself once said that there's the two most important days in a person's life is the day that he's born and the day that he figures out why he was born. And this project is the culmination of my life's work. And although being the father to Sky is by far the most fulfilling thing that I could possibly do, I really, really feel like this book is one of the reasons that I was born. Stemming back to events that occurred when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that I had no idea would ever play into this story. It has, and in very significant ways. Memories that I had as a kid of being a Native American in a past life, and how, being a 10-year-old watching Dances with Wolves at the movie theater would jar loose this past life memory that would lead me down this crazy trajectory to meet Sky's mom, Kenzie, and then to discover that, we were Native Americans together. And I won't spoil it because there's a lot of details in there, but man, this book is why I was born. And I'm thrilled I can share it with the world now. It came out on January 11th on Amazon. I think this is going to be released after the fact. So January 11th, you can get it on Amazon right now in paperback or ebook, but yeah, it's called The Sky Diaries, a true story of reincarnation. And anybody who reads it, I guarantee you're inside that book, you'll find a lot of my heart and soul in every single word of every single page, because it's my life story. It's my family's life story. It's the story of our past lives. And there's a lot of synchronicity. So for anybody who likes, I don't like the word coincidence, but anybody who likes serendipity and synchronicity and, to see something happen that defies sheer, statistical probability. This book is filled with synchronicity. I think that's even one of the sub-genre categories we listed it under, but it's been a crazy ride. Many of the proofreaders who were kind enough to help me read it, they all told me they cried. They cried. They cried. They laughed. It kind of took them on an emotional roller coaster, and for me, it did writing the book as well. Tears of joy, tears of pain, tears of relief. The book is overall happy, but it's a raw, honest look at some of the highs and lows of piecing together this past life jigsaw puzzle.
I think you did a great job with it. And something else that's completely unrelated, something that this book helped me understand or remember, is that there's a world in Middle America that we don't really see a lot of, which is that there are Andes out there in Middle America. There are Andes leading groups of people in Middle America, and that it's not just confined to the coast. So I think that that's really cool, the way that you paint that picture of an emerging Middle America.
Yeah, well, and I hope the book speaks to people on so many levels, whatever spiritual or religious background you come from, whether you're new to these topics or you've been a lifelong believer, whether you're East Coast, West Coast, or from the Midwest. I think whoever reads it will see a little bit of themselves in this book. The hopes and the dreams that we all feel, the insecurities we have if things don't work out, the times where our intuition led us to be at just the right place at just the right time to meet somebody who would forever change our lives. So I think you'll find a lot of that within the book. And primarily, it's a book about family. It's a book about guardian angels. I think it offers a lot of tangible evidence of both guardian angels and past lifetimes. And it's just an honor it's surreal actually to see it finally coming down the home stretch. I have piles of it sitting right next to me on my desk here, and my daughter Sky, she thinks it's pretty cool. She's a little entrepreneur because since the time she was old enough to talk, she's said that she wants to work with animals someday. And she has her own little YouTube channel where she does animal demonstrations. And so her entrepreneurial brain spinning, and she's like, Dad, can I come to the book signing, and can I pass out business cards so people can subscribe to my YouTube channel? I'm like, oh, buddy, but she's excited to be on the cover. People, I mean, as you'll read in the book, people have been following her since before she was born. There's a lot of examples in the book of the predictions, and maybe prophecy is too big of a word, but there was predictions. There was a lot of people dreaming of Sky before she was born. So when she finally made her way into the world, there was a whole slew of people here in Omaha and around the country that wanted to meet her, the little miracle. And little did we know at the time, she'd go on to be the last piece of this past life jigsaw puzzle. So, and she's fully aware of past lives. She understands the concept of reincarnation. She knows what I do for a living. She keeps asking when she can read the book. I said, buddy, she's only 7. I said, I don't know. I'll have to see, maybe when you're 12, maybe when you're 13, but it's surreal.
Well, just thank you for coming on and sharing all that. And where can everyone find you?
Yeah, best way to find me is hit up my website. It's andymyersonline.com. Myers is spelled Myers. There's only about 1 million ways to spell it. You can also, I'm pretty active on my Facebook page as well. You can find me there at Psychic Medium Andy Myers. And most importantly, the book, The Sky Diaries, A True Story of Reincarnation. You can get that on Amazon right now. You can start reading it here in a few minutes if you get the ebook version. Oh, and pictures. Inside the book, I forgot to. Well, you know this, Daniel, but a lot of our listeners don't have their hands on it yet. There's pictures inside the book. There's over a dozen pictures of the people and items and places that correlate, that have significance within the story. And I didn't lump all the pictures at the beginning of the book or the end of the book. I strategically filter them in little by little. So, for example, when there's a key player that I'm talking about in the story. At the end of that chapter, there's a picture of that person. So you can, so it paints the picture so you can feel like you have a mental snapshot of who it is that I'm talking about and what it is that I'm talking about as the story unfolds. So as a visual person myself, I hope that's another enticing thing that helps people buy the book. But yeah, it's 384 pages. It's a big book. You could probably knock somebody out if you hit them with it. So you've been warned. It's a bit of a read, but you get a lot of bang for your buck. So
It's a good read. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed it up to this point, and I can't wait to finish it. So just thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Daniel. You're a good soul. I hope we can do this again sometime, and I wish you continued success with the podcast. You got a good thing going here.
Thank you. And yeah, I'd love to have you on again.
Sounds good.
Fellow time travelers, your journey through time awaits you. Just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And if you're interested in discovering who, when, and where you have been throughout time, and you'd like to book a session with me, just go ahead and send me a message on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist, or you can reach me through my website, yourpastliferegressionist.com.